So happy Zayin Adar. Well, it's not really a happy day, but today is the 7th day of Adar on the Jewish calendar. And the 7th day of Adar on the Jewish calendar is noted in the rabbinic literature as the death and the birth of Moshe Rabbeinu, of Moses. And so Zayin Adar is on that calendar. A review of some of the rabbinic sources, we find that, for example, in the rabbinic literature, in the Talmud, in the what's called the Tosefta, which is a collection of rabbinic teachings that wasn't put into the Gemara or the Mishnah or the Talmud in Kiddushin. We see it's recorded on the 7th day Moshe died. It's also mentioned on the 7th day Moshe was born. And that's like any other yahrzeit, commemorating the anniversary of a passing. It's notable. It's noteworthy. People treat yahrzeits very seriously when they have a yahrzeit of a family member. One of the things that many of us have experienced, I certainly see it in the rabbinate, is the focus on this type of remembrance. Right? We're talking about Parshas Zachor this week, and how that role of memory of our enemies has permeated our religious worldview. Well, there's another word with a similar root that also very much has shaped Jewish practice. Right? Parshas Zachor. That's one element of remembrance. Anyone want to guess which other word with a similar root I'm thinking of? It's a particular practice that we have. I'll give one more hint. It's said on every holiday and Yom Kippur. And it has the root for remember in it.
Yizkor.
Excellent. Yizkor, right? Zachor, Yizkor, both come from that root to remember. And think of how Yizkor has shaped the Jewish identity. Yizkor, I have to go to Yizkor. I need to go to Yizkor, light the candles for Yizkor. Understandably so. We can remember relatives every day. We have the mourning period and the Kaddish period, and we have yahrzeits, but then we also have Yizkor. So much so that if you go back into the 1940s and 50s, synagogues would have marathon Yizkor sessions, Yizkor services on the days that Yizkor were recited. Rabbi Dr. Norman Lamb of blessed memory talks about when he arrived at the West Side Jewish Center, right? Not the Jewish Center on 86th Street, but the West Side Jewish Center on 34th Street. The practice was to have Yizkor every hour on the hour throughout the day on some of those holidays upon which Yizkor was recited. Because everyone wanted to go to Yizkor. Thousands of people would go through that synagogue. Nowadays, how many synagogues attract thousands of people ever, right? Synagogues aren't that big, but synagogues would attract thousands of worshipers passing through this synagogue to say Yizkor. So, yahrzeits are important. Remembering people is important. Remembering their legacies is important. But what about this idea of remembering Moshe Rabbeinu? How did remembering Moses develop? What are some of the unique lessons of remembering Moses? So on some level, come on, he's Moses, right? It doesn't get bigger or better than Moses. Moses is Rabbeinu. Without Moshe, there's no Torah. Without Moshe, there's no Judaism. He was the link. He was the conduit. He was the messenger between God and the establishment of Torah and Judaism. So, Moshe deserves a lot of credit. At the same time, what surrounds Moshe? What is the aura, the halo of his legacy, his incredible legacy that pushes us in this direction of commemoration, specifically on Zayin Adar? So the practice is recorded of fasting on a yahrzeit. When the day that we're commemorating the anniversary of someone's passing, we fast as a sign of atonement and reflection and the like. And so there is a record of the fast days that we had that aren't necessarily the usual ones, right? We're familiar with the fast days that come throughout the year. Of course, Tanis Esther is next Thursday. We're familiar with the ones surrounding the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash in the summer, 17 Tammuz, Tisha B'Av, 10th of Teves we had a little while back. We have Som Gedalia. But there was a record of other days that were fast days and other days that were minor festival days are recorded in the Talmudic literature. And when it comes to the 7th of Adar, it is included as a fast day. And in fact, the language that's used is that it's one of the fast days that we fast min haTorah, that we fast because the Torah says so. Now, kind of strange because the Torah never tells us to fast on Zayin Adar. So why do we say that the Torah tells us to fast to remember Moshe? So Rabbi Yosef Karo, who was another giant in the chain of tradition, the author of the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, says that even though this is not really from the Torah, it's called from the Torah because we should be so careful about Moshe's yahrzeit and to fast for Moshe as if it was from the Torah. There's like this extra oomph on when it comes to remembering Moshe that requires the reinforcement that it's almost as if the Torah is demanding and commanding that we commemorate his yahrzeit. So that's one approach. The rabbinic literature, it's Moshe's birthday, it's Moshe's yahrzeit, we fast on it. Now, the truth is, fasting on yahrzeits hasn't been so popular. We mentioned before that fasting was a lot more widespread, common, and acceptable when Jews had less to eat and people fasted more. Now that, thank God, we have what to eat, it's not necessarily so common that we're going to take on more fast days. So, what is there besides the fast day when it comes to Moshe? So, it developed an idea that this fast day, the Zayin Adar commemoration of Moshe's yahrzeit, turned into a Chevra Kadisha commemoration, the burial societies. The burial societies were linked to Moshe's yahrzeit. So at least, if not everyone feels the same level of attachment, all those who feel connected or involved in being part of the burial society, the Chevra Kadisha, or supporters of theirs, they adopted this day. Why they adopt this day? So one explanation that's often given, sometimes the more commonly known answer, is that Moshe was not buried by anyone. Hashem buried Moshe. The Torah says that God buried Moshe. No one knows where he's buried. If that's the case, then the burial society missed out on burying Moshe. So they dropped the ball. So Moshe's yahrzeit became a time for introspection to make sure that the Chevra Kadisha is doing its job correctly. They dropped the ball once. Okay, they didn't really drop the ball. They weren't given the opportunity, but it's appropriate to think about what we should be doing, whether the Chevra Kadisha is doing the right job, doing the best job that it possibly can or not. And so that was one element of Zayin Adar for the Chevra Kadisha. Another commemoration, another discussion, is the fact that Moshe was the one who was responsible for Yosef's bones, right? The Jews, when they left Egypt, had promised to take Joseph for final burial in the land of Israel, and Moshe was responsible for that. And so therefore, Moshe, the Chevra Kadisha sees this as the passing of Moshe. Moshe, I guess, he's the Jewish equivalent in this way of the patron saints of the Chevra Kadisha. Right, Moshe, for 40 years, he was the one who was taking care of Joseph's bones to make sure they had a proper burial. So he deserves acknowledgement for that, and that's the type of job that the Chevra Kadisha does as well. So that also is it relates to the technical commemoration of the 7th of Adar. So Moshe, he's Moshe, deserves commemoration. Fasting no longer necessarily as commonly as widespread, so maybe people latch onto it being about the importance of the Chevra Kadisha, and in fact that's many Chevra Kadishas have events or lectures this time of year, both for their members and for the broader community, for people to have more awareness of it. I wanted to close with spiritually. What can we learn? The Zayin Adar, Moshe's passing, and Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, talks about, maybe the soul of Zayin Adar, and kind of, a reminder of, of who Moshe is, and maybe, maybe some lessons or some insights that we can appreciate. So very often Moshe's yahrzeit, Zayin Adar, falls around when we're reading in the Torah, Parshas Tetzaveh, which is next week's Parsha. We're kind of off this year. This is, as you're aware, a very strange calendarical year. Purim's going to be on Friday, Erev Pesach's going to be on Shabbos, everything's very early. So every, 4 or 5 years, we get into kind of this strange place. But usually Moshe's yahrzeit is around Parshas Tetzaveh. Now, Parshas Tetzaveh is unique in the Torah because in the portions from the time that Moshe is born until the time that Moshe dies, Tetzaveh is the only one which doesn't mention Moshe's name. It very famously begins with the words "V'ata tetzaveh," and you will command, right? And as we all know, you shouldn't have these misplaced or unclear pronouns. Who's the you? The you is Moshe, but Moshe's name does not appear. It's the only time Parsha Moshe's name does not appear, and so there's a desire to keep it close. So this year we're a week off, but we're still within we're within the margin of error for still adopting this lesson. And so Moshe's name is not there, and but it's all about Moshe. So Moshe's name is not mentioned. On the other hand, it's all about V'ata tetzaveh. This is all about Moshe. So it's all about Moshe without mentioning Moshe. And so the Lubavitcher Rebbe talks about this idea that, on the one hand, it's all about Moshe. On the other hand, there's no direct mention of Moshe. He talks about sometimes there's the more sublime spiritual elements that aren't felt and manifest, practically speaking, or in the real world. There's a type of holiness that is appreciated and understood, but not felt. And he ties that into, Moshe, because here Moshe, this is all we know. It's Moshe. Moshe's fingerprints are in every single word of Parshas Tetzaveh, but his name isn't there. And the idea also, he talks about, if Zayin Adar is Moshe's birthday, in addition to his yahrzeit, then how come it becomes a fast day and not a celebratory day? Right? Why don't we celebrate his birthday aspect of Zayin Adar, not the passing? And he talks about that. There's such a Moshe's birth is such an auspicious occasion. It's too spiritual. It can't descend and be revealed through a birthday party. The joy remains concealed or transcendent and above us. The Lubavitcher Rebbe goes on to talk about is the difference between Shabbos and holidays. Holidays, the Jewish holidays, the biblical ones, Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot, even Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, they all have what's called obligations of simcha, joy. Shabbos, every single week, Shabbos doesn't have simcha. Now, you may see it's great at Shabbos, right? Thank God at Shabbos is the name of this class. But at the same time, Shabbos doesn't have that level of joy. Why? Well, Shabbos is obviously a special day, but the sanctity is more sublime. It requires a different approach. It's felt differently, and even when we leave it with Havdalah, it's a different type of departure. Havdalah of Shabbos is different than Havdalah of Yontif. So it's more sublime, and it can't just be experienced through joy. So Moshe, the experience of Moshe is also, his birth was transformative. His life was transformative, but we can't latch on in a practical way to, and therefore celebrate his birthday. So we're left with commemorating Moshe only through the fast day of his yahrzeit. But so we have a reminder from the life of Moshe of this idea of on the one hand, being transcendent, but at the same time, how to take from that transcendent uh, the spirituality and to bring it below. And Moshe, for the most part, was with the people, but his passing on a Torah portion, which is all about him, which doesn't mention his name, reminds us at times of being so suffused with his spirituality, with his divine energy, that sometimes it can't be fully appreciated down below. For the average Jew who's not Moshe, we experience this when we encounter Shabbos as opposed to the holidays. Holidays have a much more physical manifestation of joy, while Shabbos has that extra soul that we appreciate differently. And sometimes there's also that element of when we are active. There's the way we're active with our name being mentioned, that's part of it, and our influence and impact that comes just from accomplishing the mission that transcends the necessity to be named all the time. So Zayin Adar is red letter date. It's today. It's commemorating Moshe, whose reputation certainly precedes him. It's an opportunity, and it's turned into a Chevra Kadisha observance, commemoration, educational opportunity. At the same time, what we can also learn from the Torah's message about Moshe in the right near his passing in the Parshas Tetzaveh is this idea that the Lubavitcher Rebbe mentions of, on the one hand, a practical spirituality, but sometimes there's a level of the divine which is harder to put into words, put into actions, to be celebrated in an ordinary fashion. And we strive to be connected with that level, which is something that we learned from Moshe as well.